and it ends with Lawler challenging Dusty Rhodes to a ladder match. Listen, a lot of people have given the WWE over the years shit for making Dusty wear polka dots, but here you are in 2003 booking my man in a ladder match. I'm throwing the party foul on that one.
Come on. Now, see, look, as we dive into this episode, it is very, very hard for me to swallow the fact, Conrad, we're talking about content created 20 years ago.
Where's the time go?
I'm literally, it boggled my mind because there's some stuff in here that I don't recall, but a lot of it, I'm like, God almighty, that was 20 years ago. Oh, the American dream. And as I don't want to give the payoff to why we did this, but the fact that 20 years later, you reference polka dots and, was that a rib? Let me ask you, because you've done many an hour with our man, Mr. Bruce Pritchard. Does Bruce say the polka dots was a rib?
No, he says nothing back then was ever a rib.
Yeah.
He won't even acknowledge that Virgil being named Virgil was a rib. Clearly it was. And by the way, Akeem, the African dream, and have him doing all those silly dances like Dusty did. Come on, instead of the American, it was all a rib on Dusty. You and I haven't talked about that. Do you think there's any?
I never thought about Akeem being a Dusty rib.
Instead of the American dream, the African dream, and he's doing all the white guy doing all this. Come on.
I'm not kidding you. I thought one man gang. It's like, I just get into this. Bushwhackers. I saw something online that was a rib. I vividly remember because they were the sheep herders to me, and
yes.
Bad ass son of a guns. I mean, the sheep herders versus the Fabs was some of my. I mean, I died to go to spot shows when that program was red hot because the spot shows would be just crammed to the rafters, people everywhere, and they would. There was no 3-star, 4-star. They just brawled and kicked the hell out of each other, and it was just all that. But the sheep herders going to the bushwhackers, is that a rib? Akeem, Conrad, it's the first time I've ever. We ought to do a whole podcast, ribs in wrestling, fact or fiction.
I don't think it's debatable. Virgil, all right, so. Everyone's always heard over the years that the $1 Million Man is the character that Vince would give himself, right? This is the character that if Vince was going to be a gimmick, that's what he would do. I understand that. And then his chief competitor at the time is Jim Crockett Promotions, and the guy running the show over there, or one of the top guys in the booker, if you will, is a guy named Virgil Runnels, who once upon a time Vince might have even went with. Like Bruce has even said that had Hulk Hogan not existed, Vince would have went with Dusty. And it's crazy to think about Dusty on that first WrestleMania poster sitting next to Mr. T, what that could have looked like. Like it was a whole new thing. Of course, it didn't happen. So anyway, he names his chief rival. I mean, he has a manservant and he names him out. Can you imagine if all of a sudden there was a manservant character on WWE programming and they called him Tony Khan?
Conrad, my head has gotten so far down. Akeem was a manservant.
No, Virgil was to the $1 Million Man. That's
what I mean. Yeah. But I'm going on. You dancing is a vision in my brain that that was.
Yeah, come on. I mean, he's my dad, right? Like.
African dream. Yeah. I love Slick.
I got the figures over here where fans have sent like custom Akeems in Alabama colors. So anyway, the point is, it was all a rib. I don't think the polka dots were a rib. I mean,
I don't either. I never looked at that as a rib. I thought that was a character development.
It is character. We need some. I think a lot of people forget that you couldn't just be black boots, black trunks back then. WWE wasn't about that. They had dudes out here with birds and snakes, and bulldogs and dragons. Yeah. I mean, hell, they made one guy ride a horse to the ring with a light up cowboy hat. That poor son of a bitch.
Imagine that.
Who'd do that shit? And that's the thing that always tickled me. It's like, so polka dots were a rib. Jeff walking on a horse on concrete being lit up like he was a bad guy heel villain in the movie Running Man. That's not a rib. That's fine. And we'll dress this other motherfucker up like a clown. Also not a rib. But boy, we draw the line at these polka dots. Like what? I mean, Jeff was out there in Venetian blinds underneath a light up cowboy hat on an actual horse. And by the way, folks,
in the dark.
Jeff's fancy. I don't know that I think a lot of people think you live on like a farm. They think you and I both live on a farm and we've got barbed wire fences because we live in the South. I don't think they understand. Jeff lives in a gated community. The only way to get there is by seaplane or boat. There's a whole moat around it. There's armed guards at the gate.
Oh, stop.
Like, there's no horses. There's no barns. There's no stables. Jeff ain't a half-ass cowboy at all. I mean, all of his neighbors drive Bentleys and Rolls Royces, and he tries. Come on, just tell the truth.
Yeah, but riding a horse on concrete in the dark with pyro, you talk about making a horse. It's like a recipe. The risk of that. Anyway.
The least dangerous thing you would do that night would be wrestle. That'd be the least dangerous thing you would
We're
do.
going to walk a horse down a ramp. So you had to get that horse up there. It's just bizarre.
On concrete with pyro. By the way, how many of your, I know a lot of you might not be familiar with this. You reckon your dogs really get excited about 4th of July? Probably not. Yes. Now we got a horse, an animal that could just run over anything and destroy everything in this whole zip code. And Jeff's on it with metal shoes on concrete at night. And by the way, it's not as if this was foolproofing on this rig you used to wear that lit up. If I had to guess, a wire or two occasionally touched that skin, and that probably didn't feel that good.
This is it was it was the what do you call that, prototype?
Yes.
Yes, it was.
So the idea that you took your electric bomb jacket off and dismounted the horse, that's when you knew we're home free.
You ain't kidding. Thank God I made it through the entrance. That's the truth.
Boy, Dusty had to wear polka dots. What a rib. Come on, man. Are you kidding?
Oh, that was fun. But Dusty Rhodes in a ladder match, circling all the way back to that, just the fact that we're drawing this analogy like, oh, you're ribbing Dusty, you're doing this. Not at all. The intrigue of Brian Lawler or Brian Christopher versus Dusty Rhodes in a ladder match has the viewer going, well, I've seen Dusty throw his bionic elbow and beat up all 4 horsemen at the same time. I don't think I've ever seen him scale a ladder, but you know what? It's going to be entertaining. And his promo to get into it is highly entertaining. That's part of Dusty, because this was a collaboration with Dusty, and the payoff we'll get to in a minute. But it was obviously thought through. But how are we going to get there? And Lawler, God rest his soul, Brian was a bump taking son of a gun, super entertaining, knew exactly how to kind of get this roll over, and it did it well. But that's how we kicked off April of 2003 at the TNA Weekly Asylum shows.